Welcome to Navenda Studio, home to the exclusive narrative society, where stories come alive and voices craft enchantment. Please, ma'am, head straight, and then turn right. The evening's tale is about to unfold. And don't forget to subscribe to our super exclusive club.
Hello, friends. Please take your seats. Let the storytelling begin.
Exclusive story, The Havenwood Legacy. In the heart of Havenwood, a determined woman fights to preserve her late grandmother's cherished community garden from the grasp of a ruthless developer. But as she unearths long-buried secrets, her battle transforms, no longer just about land, but about protecting the very essence of her town. Let the story unfold. Over to you, Navendu.
Okay, so let's start. Picture this. Havenwood, Ohio. You've got the gentle creak of a porch swing, that lazy summer sound, and the cicadas are humming away. It's hot. You can almost smell Mrs. Henderson's roses, like, right down the street.
Right. It paints a picture immediately, doesn't it? That classic small-town vibe, very close-knit.
Exactly. Everybody probably knows your grandma's pie recipe, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you feel like you know the place, or history, and, well, people are all tangled up together.
Totally. And right into this setting, Sarah Jenkins comes back. Her grandmother, Eleanor, passed away.
Okay.
And along with the house and all the memories, Sarah inherits something pretty special. The green sprout.
The green sprout.
Yeah, it's this community garden. But it's way more than just, a plot of land. It was Eleanor's big project, her legacy. Really the heart of Havenwood, in a way.
So it's clear right off the bat this isn't just a simple inheritance. It's got emotional weight, community ties, a real responsibility.
Absolutely. Connects to the town's past, and Sarah's now sort of responsible for its future.
Right.
But as our source material starts to show us, things aren't quite as peaceful as they seem in Havenwood.
Okay. Here comes the twist.
Yeah. So picture Sarah. Maybe she's in the garden, having a quiet moment,
Yeah.
And this crisp envelope arrives. Formal invitation.
Okay. An unexpected formality in that setting. What was it for?
It's from Sterling Developments, and get this, the Havenwood Preservation Society. An invitation to a groundbreaking ceremony.
Groundbreaking. Where?
At the Green Sprout Community Garden.
What? At the garden itself?
Yep. For a project called the Sterling Promenade.
Wow. Okay. The Sterling Promenade on the community garden land? I can see why that would be jarring.
Jarring is putting it mildly. Sarah's reaction is just like complete disbelief, maybe a bit of outrage too. A shopping promenade on her grandmother's community garden.
The names alone tell a story, don't they? Green Sprout versus Sterling Promenade. Very different vibes.
Absolutely. One's all about community, growth. The other sound, well, commercial. Impersonal, maybe.
And that other name, the Havenwood Preservation Society. That immediately raises a flag, doesn't it?
It really does. What kind of preservation society partners with a developer for this? Sarah starts wondering the same thing.
So what does she do? Try to call them?
Her first instinct, tries calling Sterling Developments. But you know how it is.
Yeah.
Automated menus, hold music, just gets the runaround. That feeling of hitting a wall.
Yeah, that
No.
faceless corporation thing. Makes you feel pretty small and powerless sometimes.
Right, so that doesn't work. She decides, okay, gotta be more direct. She looks up the address for this Havenwood Preservation Society.
Okay, boots on the ground. Does she find some, quaint little historical office?
Not quite. The address leads her straight to this sleek, modern building with a big Sterling Developments logo out front.
Oh, there it is.
Yep.
So the Preservation Society isn't some independent group. It's basically Sterling.
Looks that way. It immediately throws their whole preservation claim into question, right? Like, whose interests are they really preserving?
Exactly. It suggests a lack of transparency, to say the least. What happens when she goes inside?
She walks into the Sterling office, meets Gary, the receptionist. He's kind of polite but bored at first,
Standard procedure.
But then Sarah explains why she's there, mentions the green sprout, the invitation, and his whole demeanor shifts a bit.
How so?
He gets very businesslike. Tells her, just matter of fact, that yes, Sterling Developments acquired the green sprout last quarter.
Acquired, just like that.
Yep, part of their, quote, downtown revitalization initiative.
Ah, the language. Revitalization always sounds positive, even when it might mean tearing something down.
Exactly. And then comes the real kicker. Gary mentions a generous donation made in Eleanor's name.
A donation? From who? To who?
Apparently, Sterling made a donation to the Havenwood Preservation Society, in Eleanor's name, to honor her, quote, community spirit.
Wow, okay. That is audacious. To use her name like that, for a society they seemingly control, to justify taking her garden.
Right. You can just feel Sarah bristling. Her grandmother, the woman who poured her life into that garden for the community. She would never have sold it or donated it for a mall. Never.
Of course not. It sounds completely counter to everything Eleanor stood for, based on the description.
So Sarah pushes back, says, I have the deed. It's my property.
And what does Gary say to that?
This is where it gets really unsettling. He just says, deeds can be updated, Ms. Jenkins.
Oof, that's a veiled threat, isn't it? Or at least a serious power play.
Totally. And he even sort of hints that Sarah might not know the full arrangements her grandmother made. He drops Victor Sterling's name, implying Eleanor had some deal with him.
Victor Sterling, the head of Sterling Developments, presumably, and full arrangements. That's deliberately vague, designed to sow doubt in Sarah's mind.
Exactly. Undermine her position, make her question her own grandmother. It's quite manipulative.
It really is, trying to make it seem like Sarah's the one who's misinformed or out of the loop.
And then Gary just dismisses her, says something condescending like, the groundbreaking will be quite the event, completely ignoring her distress, her claim. Sarah just leaves, feeling steamrolled, and frankly, scared.
So the battle lines are drawn pretty clearly right there. Sarah holding on to her grandmother's legacy and the community space versus this big developer, Sterling, who claims it's already a done deal.
Yeah, it's a classic setup, isn't it? The individual against the corporation. The local versus the outsider.
Definitely. And that's really what we're digging into here with this deep dive into the start of the Havenwood legacy. We're looking at how this fight over one garden opens up these much bigger questions.
Questions about community, about what legacy means, and, well, the power dynamics when development clashes with preservation. This source material gives us that crucial first look.
It's a conflict you see playing out in different ways all over, that tension between progress, or what some call progress, and preserving what makes a place unique.
Absolutely. So naturally, Sarah doesn't just, accept Gary's dismissal. She needs allies. Where does she turn first?
Makes sense. She needs people who knew her grandmother, who know Havenwood.
Exactly. She goes to Marty Riley, Eleanor's best friend, her closest confidant.
Ah, perfect. Someone who really knew Eleanor. That must have been reassuring for Sarah.
Immensely, I think. Marty represents that local history, that deep knowledge of the town and its people. And Marty, well, she doesn't mince words.
What's her take on Sterling?
She calls Victor Sterling a silver-tongued viper.
Haha, okay. Tells you something about his reputation, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and she's absolutely emphatic. Eleanor would never have dealt with him willingly. Marty says Eleanor would sooner have a paved paradise herself than let Sterling get his hands on that garden.
That's powerful imagery. It completely validates Sarah's feelings and confirms that Sterling's claim about a donation or arrangement is, well, likely nonsense.
Right. Marty becomes this anchor for Sarah, a connection to Eleanor's fierce spirit and just solid, unwavering support.
And crucially, Marty doesn't just offer sympathy, right? She starts thinking strategy.
Yes, exactly. She's not just emotional support. She's practical. Tells Sarah she needs a lawyer, pronto. And suggests contacting someone else, David Miller.
David Miller? Who's he?
He's a reporter for the local paper, the Havenwood Herald. Sarah apparently knew him back in high school.
Okay, a journalist. That could be useful.
And Marty mentions that David's father used to be Eleanor's lawyer. So there's a potential connection there, maybe some background knowledge David might have access to.
Interesting. So Sarah's starting to build a small team, isn't she? People rooted in Havenwood connected to Eleanor. That community network kicking in.
It really is. It shows how important those bonds are when you're up against something that feels huge and impersonal like Sterling Development.
Yeah, the power of community.
And Marty really drives home the stakes at the end of this initial part. She tells Sarah, look, this isn't just about a garden, Sarah. It's about Eleanor's legacy. It's about Havenwood. And Victor Sterling, she says, has just picked a fight with the wrong people.
Wow, that's a fantastic line. It sets everything up perfectly. It's not just a property dispute anymore. It's a fight for the town's soul, almost.
Pretty much. It leaves you really wanting to know what happens next, how Sarah and her allies are going to fight back.
Definitely. So, just to kind of wrap up this first part, we've seen Sarah return, inherit the garden, and almost immediately get hit with the shocking news about Sterling's plans.
Right, and she's found support from Marty, who's like this embodiment of Havenwood's spirit, and she has a lead with David Miller, the journalist.
But there are huge questions hanging in the air. Like, how did Sterling get his hands on that deed or claim to? What's the real story behind this preservation society?
And what lengths will Victor Sterling go to? Gary's comment about updating deeds feels pretty ominous.
It really does. It hints that this might get dirty.
And we know, looking just a bit ahead in the source material, that things do get complicated. There's a lawyer who isn't much help, a big public confrontation at a town hall, even some unsettling incidents at the garden itself. Sabotage, maybe?
So the conflict escalates quickly. It really draws you into this local drama, but it also makes you think about bigger things, right? Like how much these community spaces matter.
Absolutely. It's about grief, legacy, community identity, and just that fundamental struggle of ordinary people standing up to powerful interests. Marty's line sums it up. It's about Havenwood, about Eleanor, not just the dirt and the plants.
Yeah, that fight for the green sprout becomes symbolic of something much larger.
It really does. And it kind of leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About the places in your own community. What spots hold that kind of meaning?
Mm-hmm. What spaces are really worth fighting for?
Yeah. And maybe, what would you actually do to protect them if someone like Victor Sterling came knocking? It's definitely something to chew on after this initial dive.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into a situation in Havenwood. It's about the Green Sprout Community Garden. Sarah Jenkins owns it, but now this developer, Victor Sterling, is trying to build there.
Right, and he's claiming that Sarah's grandmother, Eleanor Jenkins, the one who, originally set up the garden, actually sold or maybe donated the land to his company before she passed away.
It's a real mess. And for this deep dive, our main source is an audio story that follows Sarah as she tries to fight this.
Yeah, it puts you right there with her.
So our mission today is to really get into this fight, the conflict heating up, the big problems Sarah's hitting, and importantly, who might actually be able to help her save this garden. It's about her grandmother's legacy, really.
And the community space itself, which sounds pretty vital.
Definitely. Okay, so let's start digging. The story really kicks off with Sarah and Marty. He was a good friend of her grandmother's going to see a lawyer, Arthur Albright, over in Oak Haven.
And this meeting, wow, it immediately shows you just how steep the climb is going to be for Sarah. Albright is. Well, he's not exactly encouraging.
Not at all. He's pretty dismissive, basically saying, going up against Sterling Developments, good luck with that. The money difference is just too big.
He highlights the power imbalance straight away. These big developers, they have deep pockets for legal fights.
Yeah, and he throws out this figure, $20,000, just as a retainer. That's just to get started, just to begin looking into things, the discovery phase.
An upfront fee, basically. And for many people, that's an insurmountable hurdle right there.
Right, and then he suggests maybe you should just negotiate a, what did he call it, a nuisance fee.
Basically, yeah, take a bit of money to make the problem go away. From a purely cold, calculated legal view, maybe it seems pragmatic considering the costs of a long fight.
But it completely ignores why Sarah's fighting. It's not about money for her. It's the garden, her grandmother's wishes.
Exactly. The emotional connection, the community value, none of that factors into Albright's nuisance fee suggestion. And you can hear Sarah and Marty just rejecting that outright. Giving up isn't on the table for them.
No way. But you can also sense this is where the first real doubts creep in for Sarah. That lawyer's assessment, it makes her wonder, could Eleanor have actually signed something? Maybe when she wasn't well.
Or even just the fear that Sarah isn't strong enough, doesn't have the resources to protect what Eleanor built. It's a heavy burden.
It really is. But then she remembers her grandmother's own words, something Eleanor told her about fighting for things that matter, even when it's hard.
That memory seems to give her a bit of strength, doesn't it? Yeah. A reason to push back against that initial wave of pessimism from the lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. So feeling pretty discouraged but not defeated, where do they go from Albright's fancy, unhelpful office?
Well, the next stop offers a bit more hope, actually. They head over to the Havenwood Herald, the local newspaper office.
And the difference is like night and day, right? Compared to the lawyer's place.
Totally.
Yeah.
It feels much more grounded, part of the community. And they meet David Miller, a journalist there.
And David, he listens. Like, really listens. He takes them seriously right from the start.
And what's really key here is that David already knows a bit about Victor Sterling. He's apparently seen this kind of thing before.
Oh, really? What did he know?
The audio story mentions David knows Sterling has this pattern, targeting properties that communities value, sometimes using these preservation societies as a kind of cover.
A cover? How so?
It sounds like Sterling might use these groups, or maybe complicated paperwork associated with them, to sort of obscure what he's really doing. Makes it look legitimate, maybe confuses owners, until it's too late to stop him.
Wow. So it's not just Sarah's gut feeling. David sees a potential pattern here.
Exactly. So he believes Sarah's story, or at least believes it's very plausible and needs investigating. He doesn't dismiss her fears about the supposed signed agreements from Eleanor.
And there's a personal angle too, isn't there? With David and Eleanor.
Yeah, apparently Eleanor helped David out in the past somehow. He feels like he owes her one, you know? So it's not just a story for him, it's personal. He wants to help Sarah figure out if Sterling is bluffing or if he genuinely has something signed.
That shared motivation seems really important. So what's their first move, David and Sarah?
The plan is twofold. First, dig into Sterling's claims about these signed agreements, try to find out if they even exist. And second, go to the upcoming town hall meeting.
Ah, the town hall where Sterling is presenting his big plans, taking the fight public?
Precisely. Force the issue out into the open.
Okay, so let's go to that town hall meeting. What was the atmosphere like?
Picture the Havenwood Community Hall. Sterling's up there, very smooth, very confident. He's unveiling his project, the Sterling Promenade.
Sounds grand.
Oh yeah. He's painting this picture of progress, community benefit, all that jazz. And he mentions working with the Havenwood Preservation Society.
That society David was wary of.
The very same. And Sterling even has the nerve to suggest that Eleanor Jenkins herself was supportive of this kind of development for Havenwood.
Wow, using her memory to sell his project? That's bold.
It's a calculated PR move, right? Wrap the controversial project in the flag of community betterment and Eleanor's legacy.
But Sarah's there. She doesn't just sit there, does she?
Not a chance. She stands up, identifies herself. I'm Sarah Jenkins, Eleanor's granddaughter, and states clearly, that garden, the green sprout, is mine. Directly challenges his whole narrative.
Good for her. That must have taken guts. How does Sterling react?
Oh, he's smooth. Doesn't miss a beat. He basically pats her on the head, metaphorically speaking. Says she's understandably emotional, perhaps a little misinformed.
Ugh, dismissive again.
Totally. And then he mentions having correspondence and even signed agreements from Eleanor that supposedly support his position, undermining Sarah publicly.
So he doubles down on the claim and tries to make her look like the unreasonable one.
Exactly. He frames his project as being for the greater good of Havenwood, suggesting he's the one truly honoring Eleanor by bringing this supposed progress. It's classic manipulation.
How did the crowd react? Did they buy it?
The story mentions hesitant applause. So maybe Sterling swayed some people initially, but Sarah's challenge clearly planted seeds of doubt. People weren't just cheering wildly.
Interesting. And David, the journalist, he was there too.
Yes, and he points out something important afterwards. Sterling specifically mentioned signed agreements. That's not vague. It's a concrete thing they can now try to find or disprove. It gives them a target.
A specific lead.
Okay.
But things don't exactly get easier after the town hall, do they?
No, quite the opposite. Things start getting ugly. Back at the green sprout, unsettling stuff starts happening.
Like what?
Little things, but sinister. The gate is found jimmied open one morning. Seedlings are trampled. Garden hoses slashed. And then, no trespassing signs suddenly appear on the fence.
Oh, wow. That sounds like intimidation tactics. Trying to scare people off.
Absolutely. It's low-level harassment, designed to make the volunteers nervous, make Sarah feel unsafe and alone, create this atmosphere of, is it worth it?
And it works. People get nervous.
Yeah, the volunteers are definitely getting anxious. Mrs. Gable, one of the longtime gardeners, voices her concerns. Her husband apparently saw a suspicious truck lurking around.
That's really worrying. And how does Sarah react to this vandalism?
It hits her hard. Especially, the story notes, when she finds Eleanor's prized rose bush damaged. That feels incredibly personal, like a direct violation.
Yeah, that's not just property damage, that's attacking a memory.
Right. And there's this poignant moment where Sarah reads an old journal entry from Eleanor talking about dealing with developers back in the day and the need to plant beauty in the face of ugliness.
Wow, like her grandmother knew this kind of thing might happen.
It seems like it. It strengthens Sarah's resolve, but you can also feel the pressure mounting on her. it's getting intense.
So, legal walls, public manipulation, now outright sabotage. It seems pretty bleak. Is there any good news?
Well, just as things feel like they're hitting a low point, David Miller calls Sarah urgently.
Okay, what's happened?
He thinks he might have a lead, a real one, someone who used to work for Sterling on his acquisitions team.
An insider.
Potentially. David says this person might know something about how Sterling got hold of properties, maybe about Eleanor's land specifically. But there's a catch.
What's the catch?
This person is scared, really scared to talk, afraid of repercussions from Sterling, presumably.
Understandable, given everything else. But still, that's huge. That could be the break they need.
It really could be. It feels like a potential turning point, a chance to finally get some concrete evidence about Sterling's claims and maybe, just maybe, expose what's really going on.
Okay, so let's just recap the main challenges Sarah's juggling right now. It's a lot.
It is. You've got the legal system stacked against her, financially at least. You've got Sterling actively manipulating public opinion, painting himself as the good guy. And then there's the direct intimidation, the vandalism at the garden itself.
Yeah, it's pressure from all sides. And this potential whistleblower David found, everything seems to hinge on whether they can get that person to talk and what they might reveal about those supposed signed agreements.
Absolutely. Proving those agreements are fake or were obtained improperly, that feels like the key to unlocking this whole thing for Sarah and saving the Greenstrom.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Puts you in her shoes.
Yeah.
What does it really take to stand up for a legacy, especially when you're facing someone with so much power? How far would you go, to protect something that means everything to your family, to your community?
It's a tough question. Definitely something to mull over. What matters most, and what are you willing to risk for it? We're diving straight back into a story that keeps unfolding with some pretty surprising twists. Based on the latest sources you've shared, the fight for the Green Sprout Community Garden is really reaching a new intensity.
That's right. Yeah, this is a direct continuation of the narrative we've been following, that, compelling battle to save the garden in Havenwood from, the powerful developer, Victor Sterling.
Our mission today, as always in these deep dives, is to cut through the information you've provided, pull out the most important insights, and really get a handle on what these new developments mean. We're looking at fresh allegations, an unexpected encounter, and this growing wave of community support, all strictly based on the material you've given us.
And the details in these sources, they reveal a story that feels, both deeply personal and also kind of representative of much larger struggles,
Okay, let's pick up where we left off. The pressure was already pretty significant. The garden was facing some low-level sabotage, and critically, it seemed like a former Sterling employee held some key information.
Right. This is where David Miller, the journalist, comes back in. The sources describe him meeting this former employee, Arthur Finch, at a discreet diner.
Okay.
And you really get the sense of deep unease. Finch is incredibly nervous, constantly scanning the room, really worried Sterling could ruin it.
Absolutely. The material paints a picture of his fear, but also, this strong sense of moral burden. He felt compelled to speak because, as he put it, what he did, what he made us do, it wasn't right.
Yeah.
There's even that detail about Eleanor Jenkins, the garden's founder, bringing them cookies once.
Yeah.
It just adds this layer of human conflict to his decision.
It really does. So Finch was on Sterling's acquisitions team. His job was basically getting signatures, and he admits they were under immense pressure. Incentivized heavily, that's the quote.
Right.
Sterling wanted that Green Sprout parcel specifically. He saw it as vital to his whole downtown vision. And when Eleanor refused to sell, Sterling gave a direct high-stakes order. Find a way or find a new job.
Wow. Okay. And according to Finch, they, quote, found a way. This is where the most serious allegation comes out, isn't it?
It is. Finch recounts this specific visit to Eleanor where, despite all the pressure, she didn't sign the main sale agreement. She was frail, wanted time, wanted to talk to her lawyer.
Makes sense.
But the sources indicate Sterling wanted that deal closed immediately. Now, Finch explicitly states that back at the office, a signature later just appeared on the contract. He describes it as a very good imitation of her handwriting.
A very good imitation. So he's implying.
Well, he points directly at his department head, describing him as particularly skilled at what Finch calls document facilitation.
Document facilitation, that sounds euphemistic.
Extremely. Based on Finch's account, in the sources, the clear implication is forgery. Forgery was involved in that final transfer document.
Okay, so that's huge.
And he also shares his suspicion about earlier documents, those letters of intent Sterling waved around at the town hall meeting.
Yeah, I remember those.
Finch believes Eleanor might have signed those, maybe on official letterhead, genuinely thinking she was just agreeing to discuss options, not actually committing to sell the land. He calls it a master of the bait and switch.
Bait and switch. So, suggesting a pattern of deception from the start.
Exactly, it suggests a pattern.
So Finch lays out this potentially explosive testimony, but here's the big catch.
Yeah.
He's too afraid of Sterling to testify in court.
Right. The sources make that crystal clear. His fear of being ruined, losing his family's security, it's paramount.
Which just starkly reveals the kind of power Sterling wields, doesn't it? The ability to silence people through sheer intimidation.
Absolutely. However, Finch does provide something tangible. From the source material, we know he gave Miller copies of internal memos.
Memos? About what?
About the Jenkins parcel strategy. Now, the sources note these aren't, like, direct proof of forgery.
But they show intent.
Exactly. They clearly show the intent, the high level of corporate focus, and just the intense pressure behind getting that specific property.
Okay, so that's something concrete. And then comes the critical lead, right?
Yes. Finch names a specific person. Janice Holloway.
Janice Holloway.
A notary. She reportedly left Sterling's company very abruptly around the same time, and the rumor, according to Finch, was that she hadn't played ball on something big.
Hadn't played ball.
Wow.
Okay, so for Sarah and Marty, Finch's whole account must have been, well, vindication, right?
Oh, definitely. Powerful validation of their gut feeling they never believed Eleanor would have just willingly sold the garden. But it's also fueled by, anger at the alleged deceit.
Understandable.
And their immediate focus, according to the sources, just snaps right onto finding Janice Holloway.
So looking at this whole section for the sources, the core insight is just, it's striking. These materials really vividly illustrate how incredibly difficult it can be to prove corporate misconduct, especially when key witnesses are essentially terrified into silence by someone like Victor Sterling.
Absolutely. It validates Sarah's fight, it gives specific alleged tactics, but it also just highlights the massive challenge of turning these allegations into actual, usable, courtroom-ready proof without cooperation from those key insiders.
It's a huge hurdle. Okay, now, shifting gears completely, we go from that tense, quiet meeting to a very public scene, the lead-up to Victor Sterling's big groundbreaking ceremony for the Sterling Promenade.
Right. And the sources introduce us to Chloe Sterling here, Victor's daughter. She's tasked with organizing this massive high-profile event.
Okay, his daughter. What's she like?
Well, she's described as young, maybe early 20s, and just seemingly desperate to impress her father. You really sense her stress level through the details in the sources. She's coordinating champagne fountains, demanding orchid topiaries.
Orchid topiaries?
Orchid topiaries. And she's complaining into her headset about transforming this patch of dirt next to the garden into something elegant. It's clearly framed as a total nightmare for her.
And the green sprout garden itself, how does that fit into her nightmare?
Oh, it's depicted as a major annoyance, an obstacle to her perfectly planned event. The sources mention her arguing with the catering manager, just bothered by the garden's presence.
How so?
Complaining about the slope of the ground nearby, the pollen count, even the garden's, quote, rustic charm giving her linen supplier hives. She actually says the garden is casting a pall over my canopies.
Casting a pall over the canopies. Wow. Okay. Meanwhile, Sarah's just there.
Sarah's just present, yeah. Quietly tending to the garden right at the edge. Chloe spots her and, totally focused on her event logistics, basically tries to shoo her away, tells her to do your digging somewhere else.
Oh boy. How does Sarah react?
Well, Sarah's response, as described in the sources, it's this moment of quiet strength. She just stands her ground. Calmly but powerfully, she articulates the garden's real value.
What does she say?
She talks about its 30-year history, its deep community roots, Eleanor's legacy, even mentions that detail about Eleanor donating flowers from the garden to the local hospital.
Ah, that's powerful.
And she directly contrasts the garden's genuine beauty with the, artificial elegance Chloe's trying so hard to manufacture.
Good for her. And then she takes it a step further, right?
She really does, a significant step. She directly races the allegation of forgery. Right there, to Chloe.
To his daughter, wow.
Tells Chloe to ask her father about the original signed document. And she specifically asks about a notary named Janice Holloway being involved, drops the name.
Drops the name. Okay, how does Chloe take that?
Well, the sources describe her initial reaction as scoffing, defending her father, calling him a respected businessman, saying he even created a preservation society in Eleanor's name.
Right, the society.
But critically, the sources note that after Sarah's challenge, there's this flicker of uncertainty. A complex expression crosses Chloe's face.
Ah, interesting.
Even as her demanding father is calling her phone, pulling her attention back to the event. So there's a moment there.
That unexpected exchange, it reveals a really fascinating dynamic, doesn't it? It highlights that stark contrast in values. Community legacy, real connection versus just corporate image and manufactured perfection.
And it humanizes things a bit, showing maybe a potential crack, a seed of doubt, even within the Sterling family itself.
Yeah, exactly. What this moment really teaches us, I think, is that simply speaking truth to power, even to someone who seems completely entrenched on the other side, like Chloe, it can have an unpredictable effect.
Definitely unpredictable.
Maybe a significant impact. It hints that perhaps Victor Sterling's own family isn't entirely immune to the moral weight of his actions.
Exactly. It suggests the story isn't just black and white, There are these shades of gray, potential internal conflict within the opposing camp. It's not monolithic.
Right. Okay, so from that really personal encounter, let's zoom out now to the broader public arena, because this is where the community truly starts to mobilize, based on the sources.
Yeah, this surge of public action is clearly fueled by that David Miller article in the Havenwood Herald, the one titled, "Whose Garden Is It Anyway?"
Right, the article. How did it land?
Well, the sources note it was cautious, right? It mentioned raised questions, irregularities, cited anonymous sources, likely Finch.
Okay, so carefully worded.
Very. But its effect was powerful. The sources say it lit a fire under Havenwood.
Lit a fire, okay.
Yeah.
And that fire manifested as a rally.
A vibrant rally, yeah.
Held right at the Green Sprout and strategically timed just before Sterling's scheduled groundbreaking next door.
Smart timing. What was the atmosphere like?
The sources describe it as lively, really energetic, full of chatter, laughter, even some music apparently, just creating this clear counter-narrative to the corporate event being set up nearby.
And who showed up? Was it just the usual suspects?
No, that's the key. It was diverse, really reflecting the garden's broad reach in the community. It was longtime residents who knew Eleanor personally, young families who used the children's programs, local artists, even some business owners who were just fed up with Sterling's influence.
So a real cross-section. Absolutely. And we get these vivid little details from the sources, like Mr. Henderson's handmade sign that said, "Hands off our herbs." And Mrs. Gable was apparently handing out cookies she'd baked using zucchini from the garden. Little things like that really bring it to life.
They really do.
Yeah.
And Marty Riley was involved.
Yeah, Marty's described as playing a key role, really rallying the crowd, framing the struggle as being about the entire town, not just Sarah or the garden itself, preserving Eleanor's legacy for all of Havenwood.
Makes sense.
Oh.
Then Sarah speaks.
Then Sarah takes the megaphone. The sources note she's visibly nervous at first,
Understandably.
but her passion just shines through. She thanks the crowd, tells them their presence means everything, and she articulates the garden's true value beyond just, vegetables and flowers.
What does she focus on?
She says it's about community, a place that belongs to all of us. That's the direct quote emphasized in the source.
Belongs to all of us.
Oh! And she directly contrasts Sterling's vision, which she calls another strip mall, another monument to greed, with what she defines as real progress for Havenwood.
Which is?
Nurturing our roots, building community connections. And she ends with this really powerful, clear declaration that just resonates with everyone there. We will not let him take this.
And the crowd's reaction.
Immediate, unified, enthusiastic cheers and chants of "Save the Sprout." Just a really potent display of collective will.
But there's always a but with Sterling, it seems.
There is. The sources include a crucial detail. Sterling's men, including Gary, you remember Gary?
Oh yeah, Grim Gary.
They're watching from the periphery. Their grim expressions are noted, serving as this stark reminder that despite all the community energy, the threat from Sterling is still very much active and observing.
Chilling. So this outpouring of support, what does it really signify in the context of the sources?
Well, it clearly signifies the deep, deep connection the Green Sprout has to the lives of Havenwood residents. The sources really show how information, even cautionally reported information, can mobilize a diverse community when it strikes a chord.
Right.
It totally solidifies Sarah's position, demonstrates she's absolutely not fighting alone anymore. She has the backing of the townspeople, the people who really embody Eleanor's vision of community.
And what this section powerfully illustrates, I think, is that while, yes, financial power is formidable, public opinion and collective action, when they're mobilized by shared values and a compelling story like this, they can act as a significant counterweight.
A real counterweight.
To those powerful private interests.
It confirms that community engagement isn't just, symbolic hand-holding. It can become a very real force in challenging established power structures.
Absolutely. So, okay, looking back at this deep dive today, we've moved through some really critical developments from the sources you shared. We've seen these serious allegations of forgery emerge from an insider's account.
Giving crucial leads like the potential witness, Janice Holloway.
Right. Then we witnessed that unexpected confrontation between Sarah and Chloe Sterling that, maybe planted a seed of doubt where you least expected.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
And finally, we saw the really inspiring rise of community support, galvanized by information and clearly united by their shared connection to the Green Sprout.
The stakes, as revealed in these sources, they just feel incredibly high now. The fate of the garden itself, Eleanor's legacy, and maybe even the identity, the soul of Havenwood. It seems like so much could hinge now on whether Janice Holloway can actually be found.
And if this community unity can hold.
And if it can be sustained against Sterling's pressure.
Exactly.
So, thinking about the lengths the sources suggest people might go to for profit, and then contrasting that with the incredible power of a community standing together that we've just seen come to life here, it leaves us with a pretty powerful question for you, the listener, to consider.
What truly defines progress in a town like Havenwood, and whose vision, the developer's vision, or the community's vision, will ultimately shape its future? Something to ponder until our next deep dive into this unfolding story. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into the end of the Havenwood Legacy audio story.
That's right.
We've done the listening, and now we're pulling out the core moments from that big showdown over the Green Sprout.
We're basically distilling it all down.
Our source is that audio narrative itself, a really compelling story.
It is, and we're picking things up right at the climax, really. Havenwood's community is pushing back hard against Victor Sterling, the developer.
Yeah, he wants to build over the Green Sprout.
Exactly, and this groundbreaking ceremony, it's the flashpoint. There are already questions about whether Sterling even legally owns the land, so you're probably wondering how it all plays out.
Let's get into it. So the groundbreaking ceremony, the audio, it paints a really vivid picture, doesn't it? So many contrasts.
Oh, absolutely. You've got this tension you can almost taste in the crowd.
Right, real unease.
Yeah.
But then there's this weirdly cheerful, brassy corporate music playing.
Totally out of place. It's jarring.
And visually, you have these huge bulldozers poised to dig right next to shiny Sterling Promenade banners.
And then the community signs. Handmade things.
Growth, not greed. Honor Eleanor's haven. Havenwood is not for sale.
Yeah.
It immediately sets up this feeling of David versus Goliath.
Yeah, and the audio uses that contrast, the sound, the descriptions, to really hammer home the opposing forces. Sterling's voice, booming over the speakers, talking about a momentous occasion about progress, but it just rings hollow against the community standing there.
And he's so dismissive, calling their concerns minor, their connection to the place just sentimental.
Right, it shows how out of touch he is, or maybe how he deliberately frames it to minimize their position. Profit over people, pretty much.
Definitely. And then Sarah Jenkins steps up.
Yeah.
And the audio shifts, right? Her voice isn't amplified at first, but it just cuts through.
It does. Her saying that this progress is built on deceit.
And this land is not yours to destroy. That felt like the moment things really shifted, like personal conviction sparking something bigger.
It really did. And Marty jumping in right away saying, this community stands with Sarah. That just cements it. You feel the crowd solidify.
Yeah, okay, we're doing this.
It makes you think, doesn't it, about how one person's courage can sometimes be that catalyst. Sarah speaking up, Marty backing her. That's how movements catch fire, maybe.
Yeah, what's that tipping point from just being unhappy to actually resisting?
Exactly.
And Sterling, well, he clearly loses it. He signals the bulldozers. and you hear this low rumble start up in the audio. The crowd just gasps. It feels really volatile, like something's about to break.
And then, bam, David Miller shows up, the journalist.
But he's not alone.
No, he's brought Janice Holloway.
Yeah.
And she used to be a notary for Sterling's company.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This is huge, because now it's not just feelings versus business plans. Janice brings facts.
So what does she say?
Well, she gets on the megaphone, and you can hear she's nervous, but determined.
Yeah. And she says she was pressured, told to notarize papers Eleanor Jenkins hadn't actually signed in front of her.
No way.
Yes. And when she refused, they threatened her, fired her.
That changes everything, from a community dispute to, well, potential crime.
Precisely. And Sterling immediately tries to discredit her. Absurd accusations, disgruntled former employee, the usual playbook.
Attack the messenger.
Right. But David Miller saw that coming. He's got a sworn affidavit from Janice.
Smart.
And more, expert analysis confirming Eleanor's signature on that land transfer. It's a forgery.
Wow.
And he adds that the Havenwood Herald is about to publish the whole story. So it's not just accusations anymore, it's documented, verifiable.
You can imagine the ripple through the crowd. Sterling can't just brush this off.
Know the power of proof. It really backs him into a corner. It makes you appreciate the role of, evidence and independent checks in these situations.
Just as you think, okay, this is it, Chloe Sterling steps forward, his daughter.
Yeah, that was unexpected. The audio describes her as pale, her voice trembling, but clear. It's not just about legal documents for her.
What is it, then?
It's personal. She remembers letters from her grandma Eleanor. She says the signature on the disputed land document, it just didn't look right to her. Didn't match.
Huh. So she noticed it too.
Seems like it. And she says she tried to ask her father about it, tried to see the original agreement.
Yeah.
He just shut her down, yelled at her, didn't show it to her.
Ooh. That doesn't look good.
And then she asks him, right there, in front of everyone, "What did you do, Daddy?"
Whoa, not publicly.
Yeah. And the whole atmosphere just freezes. The band cuts out, you hear cameras clicking like mad, and just the sound of those bulldozers idling. Silence, but loaded.
That's incredibly dramatic. Chloe's personal doubt laid bare like that. It's not legal proof, but emotionally.
It's devastating for Sterling.
Absolutely. It brings this whole internal family conflict right out into the open. Her conscience basically trumped her loyalty. Makes you wonder about those personal lines you won't cross.
Okay, so this leads right into Sterling's collapse. The narrative says Chloe's question was the final crack.
You can hear it in his voice. He starts sputtering, accusing everyone of a conspiracy, a smear campaign.
But it sounds desperate now, right?
Yeah.
Not confident like before.
Totally. It's the classic sign of someone whose lies are catching up. When the facts are against you, you just lash out. But it's hollow.
And then Sarah comes back strong. You can feel the anger, but it's righteous anger. She lists everything Sterling did. Preying on her grandmother, forging her name, trying to steal the land, humiliating the town.
Laying it all out.
Yeah. And asks, all for what? Another soulless plaza? More money you don't need? It really hits home.
It does. It frames it morally, not just legally wrong, but fundamentally wrong.
And she finishes with, Havenwood deserves better, my grandmother deserved better. And that feels like the real rallying cry.
It elevates the whole thing beyond just property. It's about values, about respect. You really get a sense of the community's soul, so to speak.
And you sense the tide turning completely. The audio mentions the town council members kind of murmuring, pulling away from Sterling.
Distancing themselves. Smart move.
And then the police chief steps up. Calm. Authoritative. A real contrast to Sterling losing it.
Yeah. What does he say?
He announces the groundbreaking is postponed. Indefinitely, it sounds like. And advises Sterling he'll need to answer some questions. About potential fraud. Forgery.
Oh, officially calling it out.
Yes. The crowd gasps, and Sterling just deflates. This is an outrage. But there's no force behind it anymore.
The bluster is gone. The power is shifted.
Completely. Police officers approach him. And while that's happening, Sarah turns back to the crowd.
Well, what's her message then?
It's emotional but strong. She says they didn't just save a garden, they saved a piece of our heart.
Nice line.
She talks about how they showed that community and truth and integrity, they mean more than concrete profit.
Yeah.
And she describes the Green Sprout, how her grandmother saw it, a place for growth, learning, sharing, a living, breathing legacy of connection.
Connecting the past, present, and future of the community through that space.
Exactly. And then this huge cheer erupts The bulldozers finally switch off. That sound is so significant. And this hopeful, swelling music comes in. Real victory.
A very cathartic moment in the story. The machinery silence, the community's voice triumphant. It underscores that connection between people and their place.
So what happens right after the dust settles a bit?
Well, things move fast for Sterling. He's arrested pretty quickly.
Right.
And it turns out the Green Sprout situation wasn't isolated. It unravels a whole pattern of fraud. His company basically collapses.
And that Preservation Society.
Oh yeah, the Havenwood Preservation Society. Dissolved, clearly just a front.
And Chloe, what about her?
She cooperates with the investigation. Seems like she genuinely wants to distance herself from her father's actions, maybe make amends in her own way.
Good for her. And the town. Havenwood itself.
Things start looking up. The audio gives us these nice snapshots in the weeks after. Marty congratulating Sarah calls her Sarah Bug, which is kind of sweet.
Shows that history, that connection.
Yeah, real pride in how Sarah stepped up, carrying on Eleanor's legacy. And David Miller, the reporter,
He gets recognized for his work.
he does, wins an award for investigative journalism, but he also sticks around Havenwood, seems genuinely invested. He's even seen checking out the tomatoes in the garden.
Became part of the community.
Seems like it. And Sarah has this great line about how everyone found their voice in the end.
That's good. What about the garden itself? Is it safe?
Well, the town council starts talking about formally protecting it, making the Green Sprout a historic landmark, maybe with community oversight. So, yes, it looks like a lasting victory.
That's fantastic. Any other little details?
There's a funny bit where Sarah mentions the fancy lawyer Sterling had hired early on.
Yeah.
Apparently the lawyer just wanted them to accept the small nuisance fee to go away. And Marty jokes that Sterling's probably got a black thumb trying to garden in the prison yard now.
Bit of dark humor, but satisfying, I guess.
Adds a touch of reality, you know. Life moves on, even with humor.
So it all comes back to Sarah reflecting on her grandmother's saying.
Plant good seeds, tend them with love and courage, and you'll reap a harvest you can be proud of.
And she finally gets it. Really gets
Yeah,
it.
the whole experience showed her what that meant. The Green Sprout isn't just land, it's a symbol now of the town's resilience, its spirit.
And her own transformation, too. From being reluctant, maybe unsure.
To being right at the heart of it, finding her place, her purpose, actively building on what her grandmother started, it's a powerful arc.
So the story ends on a really hopeful note for Havenwood and for Sarah. She's not just living there, she's actively, joyfully writing the next chapter.
It really leaves you feeling optimistic about what a community can achieve when they stand together for something they believe in.
A reminder that truth and integrity can, sometimes at least, win out over greed and power.
Absolutely. It highlights how important it is to stay vigilant and be willing to act.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe for you, the listener. Consider the good seeds in your own community.
What are those things, places, ideas, values that really matter?
And what does it take, that love and courage, to nurture them, to protect them? Something to think about, definitely.
Yeah.
What harvest do you want to be proud of?
Thank you, Navendu, for such a captivating narration. And a heartfelt thank you to all our wonderful listeners. Your presence makes every story come alive. We'll see you soon for another unforgettable tale. Until then, join our super exclusive narration society and be part of the magic